And welcome to this professional development tutorial designed to unpack an Atlas reading unit of study. This tutorial was developed to support teachers in navigating the tools and resources that have been provided for developing reading lessons and activities for students during this time of remote learning. In addition to identifying lenses for teaching, we will navigate the English Language Arts documents to launch planning for remote learning. In this presentation, we will explore a variety of resources and tools. We will navigate Atlas and learn how to find the lesson plans and resources contained in Atlas, such as the units of study. We will also look at the planning templates that have been designed for teachers and the planning templates that will be sent to parents each week. Finally, we will look at a lesson from the units of study and navigate that to determine the best ways to plan activities and assignments for your students. What kinds of adaptations are needed for remote learning? Before we begin planning, let's consider a few things. When reading the lessons and other unit materials, we need to always keep in mind this lens of remote learning and how that might be different than what the lessons initially called for. Plan creative and innovative adaptations and accommodations. Will you create videos or use Seesaw activities or Google Classroom assignments? You should also design authentic and engaging activities through your classroom platform, just as you would have done in your classroom at school. Will you ask students to label a photo? Will you ask students to record a video? Will you ask students to add audio to a written response? We know that you always planned authentic and engaging activities in your classroom, but now you'll be thinking about these with a remote lens. Finally, consider opportunities for students to connect and give feedback. During this time of social distancing, we want to ensure that students are continuing to have connections with one another. During social distancing, we want to avoid social isolation. So think about ways that students can connect. Will you have students give feedback with comments? Will you consider asking them to post something like a book buzz or book recommendation? We also want to continue to consider culturally responsive teaching within remote learning. As always, we want to be sure that we are centering equity, access, and educational justice. Teachers need to consider adjusting remote lesson plans to meet the needs of different students. Modifying and differentiating for learning needs of individual students can come in a variety of forms. Teachers also should consider how to help students navigate this change. This might include technology setup. You might be able to help your students as their classroom teacher or direct them to the help desk that has been set up through Ann Arbor Public Schools to support teachers and families during this time of remote learning. You might also need to support students in creating habits and routines for home that can support their learning. Consider creating lessons and activities to launch routines just as we would have launched routines in our classrooms in the fall. Building support team members have started to collect ideas or a bank of ideas to support this in a tutorial or in a document called Habits for Learning at Home. I'll show you how to find and access that in just a moment. Teachers should also consider how systems of identity influence learning and access. As always, we know that race, ability, class, language, gender, and other social identities should be at the forefront of our minds when we are planning for the individual needs of our students. We also need to keep in mind that social forces can often exacerbate inequality. Finally, we need to be thinking about how we can even the playing field with targeted universal solutions. We want to continue to hold high expectations, but we also want to provide scaffolding and support by holding the ladder. Continuing with this lens of culturally responsive teaching, teachers should be doing the following. Continuing to connect with families. We want to connect with families with an asset perspective, seeing the strengths in a child, their family, and community instead of seeing what they're lacking, don't have, or are not doing. You might consider offering to email or phone activities to a family that's having difficulty connecting with your online platform. Also consider offering flexible office hours for families. We know that families might be working from home and might not have the ability to connect with teachers during typical school hours. You might consider having one of your office hours during school hours and maybe another set of your office hours in the morning or in the early evening. Teachers should be exercising patience. This is a challenging time for everyone. Give yourself some space to grow, and your families and students. Remember that we want to prioritize relationships over completed activities and assignments. Many families and teachers are feeling overwhelmed by the impact of COVID-19. We want to exercise patience, and we want to emphasize our relationships over completed assignments. Keep in mind that sometimes when directions are written or when assignments are given in writing, it can seem demanding. So be sure to continue to connect with your students in a way that reminds them that their relationship with you and their relationship with one another is the priority. Also, teachers should be requesting help when needed, knowing that you're not alone. Support one another by joining a teaching and learning network. Also consider collaborating with your building support team and your SISS colleagues. Lastly, reflect on best practices. Keep in mind all the things that you know are best practices and good teaching that you've already employed throughout the year in your classroom. And also, keep in mind any insights that come up along the way. Share with your colleagues and support one another. If you want to learn more about culturally responsive teaching during this time of sustained remote learning, there's a link at the bottom of the slide that you can access in the slides that will take you to an article from NYU, specifically published for this time of remote learning. Now we're ready to begin with the MESA units that are found in Atlas. We have selected units for each of the grade levels. We want to be sure to teach these units because consistency will be important as we resume school in the fall. If we know the lessons and the standards that students have been taught during this time of remote learning, it will help us to know how to navigate teaching and learning when students return in the fall. Now we're ready to begin planning. We're going to begin planning by reading the abstract of the unit that your grade level has been assigned. For this part of planning, we'll have to access Atlas. I'm going to show you how you'll access Atlas. Each of the grade level teams have been given this elementary core curriculum landing page from Erica and Tony. Contained in this document, it's a landing page for each of our grade levels and our special education self-contained classrooms. There is also a section for general resources at the bottom. We're going to use second grade as our example today. I'm going to click on week 1, and when I click on week 1, a folder will open. When that folder opens, you'll find documents to support teaching, not just in ELA, but also in math and other content areas. We're going to use ELA and continue to use ELA through this program, through this tutorial, to support teachers in planning for reading. So I'm going to click on this yellow document. This is the Teacher ELA Weekly Planner. When I click on this weekly planner for week 1, I'll find a link to the weekly planner for families and the concept for this week. I'll also find these learning targets, and contained within these learning targets, I'll see the sessions where these learning targets come from. So when I open up the lessons and the unit, I know that this first learning target came from session 1 and the second learning target came from session 2. The curriculum designers also identified some vocabulary that might be helpful to identify and to use in our teaching for these lessons. You'll find that in this portion of the document. Lastly, you'll find some information for differentiation. Here you can see some accommodations for English language learners. You'll see recommended activities that teachers could use in planning and the daily suggested format that we'd like students to follow. If I go back up to the top, You'll see a hyperlink here. This hyperlink will take you directly to Atlas and to the unit for your grade level. I'm going to demonstrate how you click on that and find the unit. I'm going to open this, and this takes us to Atlas. If you have difficulty clicking on that link and it doesn't take you directly into this unit, please contact your building support team members or the technology help desk to determine if it's a username and password issue. Once you're into Atlas, you'll find the unit that has been decided for your grade level team, and you'll see right here at the top, Unit Abstract. When beginning to plan for this unit of study, you'll want to read the unit abstract found here. Now we're ready for step 2. Step 2 is to read the unit overview. The unit overview is found inside the unit of study. So now I'm going to show you from Atlas how you can find the unit of study. You're going to scroll down below the unit abstract. As you're scrolling, you'll see other tools and resources that could be helpful while you're planning. You'll see the standards that were used in creating these units. Keep scrolling, you'll see lesson sequence, and at the very bottom of lesson sequence, you'll see a hyperlink called lesson plans. You'll click on this, and when you click on this, it'll open a small window, but it will also download a Word document. My recommendation is to click on the Word document because I find it really difficult to plan using that small window. When you open up this document, this is your unit of study. You'll scroll down to the second page and find a table of contents. Here in the table of contents, you'll look to find the overview because step 2 is to read the overview of the sessions. The overview for this unit for second grade is found on page 7. So now I'm going to scroll down, and at the bottom of each of the pages, I see a page number. I'm going to scroll down to page 7. Here's page 7. I know that this is the unit overview because the table of contents told me, but it's not written at the top of this page, so I'll need to pay careful attention to the page number. Contained in this unit overview, you'll see some helpful ideas for routines, mini lessons, independent work, and partnerships. You'll want to read both of these pages for your unit overview. Now you're ready for step 3. Step 3 is a jigsaw activity that can be done with your grade level colleagues. If you decide not to work with your grade level colleagues, if you are planning individually, you'll need to read all of the following sections on your own. It is recommended that you collaborate with your colleagues and divide up the following sections. You'll want to read these sections and share your understanding. We've developed a protocol to help colleagues with this jigsaw. You can find that protocol by clicking in the slides. You'll divide up the following sections: background, resources and materials needed, and the resource packet; why a script, routines and rituals, building a community of independent readers; read aloud and accountable talk, and the first and last session. Let's click back to the unit. Here we go. So I'm going to go back up to the table of contents, and I'm going to find each of these items that was divided in the previous slide. Here you'll see the background information, why a script, resources and materials, routines and rituals, and all of those sections that we just found. But the last person was going to be finding the first and last session to read. So we know how this unit begins and we know how this unit ends. So in your unit of study document, you're going to scroll down through all of the beginning information. You're going to keep scrolling until you get to the page that says Session 1. This is the first lesson in this unit. So someone will want to read all the way through Session 1, and then they're going to want to scroll all the way down to the end of this unit and look at the last session. And in this unit for second grade, it is Session 22, and they'll want to read this entire session. There was another piece of information that was on the slide. It said the resource packet. I'm going to show you now how you can find the resource packet in Atlas. I'm going to click back over to Atlas. I'm going to exit out of this window. And I'm going to come, this is where we accessed the lesson plans. Now I'm going to come all the way over to where it says resources, and at the bottom of resources, there's another hyperlink that says resource materials packet. I'm going to click on this, and when I click on this, another small window will open with a downloaded document. Again, I prefer not to plan from this small window, so I'm going to click on this downloaded document, and when I click on this downloaded document, a new Word document will appear. This new Word document corresponds with the unit of study, and I can tell because of this picture. It matches the unit of study picture. I'm going to scroll down to the table of contents. The table of contents shows me that there are charts and resources like book list or bookmarks and things that can support each of the lessons. You can use these charts and images to support your own your teaching that you're going to be planning, or you can use them as a launching idea for creating your own charts and resources and templates. As you read and prepare for planning with your partners, you might jot, highlight, make notes, and prepare to talk with your team about the following. These are ideas that you might be familiar with from other Unpacking Units PD. However, this time you'll be continuing to think about these with the lens of remote learning. It might help you to have a note taker, so there's a note taker provided by clicking on the link on the slides. You'll click here, and this note taker will open up. You can make a copy, and you can jot your notes right here in this document. As you jot, you'll be thinking, what is the work of the students in this unit? What will students be learning? What is the work of the teachers in this unit? What kind of data will the teacher be using to inform their instruction? You know your individual classes, and you just completed your second trimester report cards, so you'll know the kind of readers who will be accessing these lessons. What are the main goals of this unit? How will you help below-level readers? Could you collaborate with your BST or your SISS colleagues to modify these assignments and activities? What kinds of books and materials will be needed? We know that many of you might not have the materials and resources that the lessons call for, so we want to show you how you might access other resources that could support your teaching and learning. There is going to be a document that you'll all have access to that looks like this. In fact, this is where you can access this video tutorial and the slides that I'm using, so you can go back and click on those hyperlinks. Below, you'll find some additional resources that we've mentioned. You might consider using Epic for your classroom. Epic is a great tool because you can access books that are trade books and leveled books for your classroom, so you can set up shelves and selections for your students to explore that would be similar to your classroom libraries. You can also set up individual shelves for students who might need more support accessing appropriate reading materials. In addition to these tools, you'll see some responsive classroom and curriculum ideas, and you'll see this video tutorial with slides and a document for habits for learning at home. We know it's going to be extremely important for us to set students up for success, so we've started this bank of ideas for supporting students through lessons and activities. What kinds of partner work will be happening, and how will you modify that partner work? Most of our students will not have a partner living at their home, so we'll want to think about how we can support that. Speaking of partners, the lessons often call for interactions between partners or book clubs. How can you modify things like turn and talk or partner or club time? You might get creative in thinking about how you can modify those opportunities for students to continue to practice the strategy that you're teaching. You might say something like, if your partner was sitting next to you, what would you say to them? and then you might direct students to pause the video and turn and talk to an imaginary partner sitting next to them. You might also launch a lesson by saying, "Find a stuffed animal in your home to be your partner for today's lesson." Then during turn and talk or other partner interactions, students can turn and talk to their stuffed animals. You could also say, "Tell someone near you or phone a friend and tell them you're thinking," and then guide students to pause the video and do that part of their practice. Finally, you might say, "Post your thinking on Seesaw or Google Classroom and ask your classmates for feedback." You might have other creative and innovative ways of modifying this partner or turn and talk idea in the lessons. Putting it all together. Once you're familiar with the unit, you're ready to begin your weekly lesson plans. These documents have been created to support teachers in planning these lessons. We already looked at this weekly planner, but also you'll have an opportunity to develop these weekly planners for families. Let's take a look at a weekly planner now. Within that folder that we accessed from this elementary core landing page, we see these weekly planners. I'm going to click on this weekly planner here. This is the weekly planner that will be delivered to parents by teachers on Sunday night or Monday morning by 8 a.m. The week 1 has been completed for you, but there are templates, blank templates, that are available for teachers in the weeks following. In this template, you'll see that we have adapted the learning targets to I can statements. We've also included the vocabulary that we feel might be supportive for families and students as they navigate the work this week. There are directions here, a suggested daily format to support teaching and learning at home, and then down below you'll see the activities for each day, a Seesaw link, and you might also see other links to video lessons, charts, or links to book flicks. When reading the lesson plans to plan for the weeks or to plan for individual activities, we suggest that you look at the lessons in an out of order or out of sequence planning. Specific components from the Mesa lessons can be guideposts when planning these remote learning activities and assignments. We suggest reading them in this order. Begin with the link and then the teaching point, the teach and then the active engagement, the connection, and then the tips and materials. We suggest the link first because we find that sometimes reading the link first helps teachers to keep in mind the end goal. Let's take a look at an individual lesson plan. Here's a screenshot of a lesson plan from the second grade unit. You can see that this lesson has the teaching point at the top. Remember that this is the origination of the learning targets and the I can statements. Next, you'll see a section here that has materials and tips. This is where you'll find text and materials that might need to be modified with digital resources and tools such as Epic or Bookflix. Next, you'll see the connection. Think about how you'll activate prior knowledge with your connection. Then the teach and active engagement sections. In the teach, this will guide you with the instruction that you might record or direct. Creativity could be employed to modify this portion for remote learning. Active engagement allows students practice, so be thinking about how you're going to allow for practice opportunities for students before they engage in independent reading. Next, you'll see the link. This link helps you to plan for what students will be doing in their independent reading. So by reading this link first, as we saw in this previous slide, by reading the link first, you'll be reading the entire lesson with the end goal in mind. Lastly, at the bottom of this page, you see considerations for partnerships. Please keep in mind how you'll modify these partnerships to allow for additional practice before independent reading, while keeping in mind that students might not have a partner near them at home. Lastly, we want to be sure that you are supported in your ongoing planning efforts. As we navigate new platforms and asynchronous experiences in this time of remote learning, reach out to others for support. Consider participating in a teaching and learning network. There'll be more to come on teaching and learning networks soon. Also, consider the supports that you might have access to from your building teams and from your district colleagues. Consider reaching out to your BLEs, your Title I teachers, your English language teachers, student intervention and student supports colleagues, and grade level colleagues, both in your building and around the district. Please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to your building literacy experts and or your curriculum team.